Hello everyone and welcome back to another screencast. This one's on probability and using sample space diagrams. So two key screencasts that I'd highly recommend or you really must watch and be comfortable with before you do this one is that you've done the screencast on sample space diagrams and drawing them, and you've done the screencast on probability and representing your answers as fractions. If you've done those two screencasts, you're going to find this ridiculously easy. What is probability? It's very, very simply how likely it is that an event will happen. And what is a sample space diagram? Well, very simply, it is the specific way of showing outcomes of an event. Here are some examples. So we're going to use that information that we learned yesterday, where we're going to draw a sample space diagram that represents all the possible outcomes if we had if we flipped a coin heads and tails and we rolled a dice 1 to 6. So I would like you now to pause the video, fill in the sample space diagram, come back and see if you've got it correct, and then I'm going to give you a question that goes along with this. So let's go through it now. I could flip a head and roll a 1, flip a head and roll a 2, flip a head and roll a 3, and so forth and so on. And I'm sure that you've done that absolutely correct. So let's give you your first proper question today, which is what is the probability of flipping a head and rolling either a 2, 4 or 6? So what I'm looking for now, I'm looking for where I've rolled or flipped a head and rolled a 2, a 4 and a 6. So my starting point is to identify where that happens, and we can see here that I flipped a head and rolled a 2, I flipped a head and rolled a 4, I flipped a head and rolled a 6. So my answer would be that there's 3 times that's happened. So 3 goes on the top. And if we know our work on probability and representing them as a fraction, we'd understand also that how many possible outcomes were there. And we can see here there's 6 and 6, which gives me 12. So my answer would be 3 times out of 12, I had those outcomes. That can be cancelled down to 1 over 4 as well. 1 over 4. So hopefully that makes all the sense to you. If it doesn't make sense, as again, you need to go back and watch that video on representing probability as a fraction, because if you've done that one, then that would make a lot of sense. Let's bring up the next question for you. So the same information is here as before, but now we've got a change in question. What is the probability of flipping either a head or a tail and rolling a 2 or a 4? So I really want you to try this one on your own. Pause the video, give it a go, come back and see if you've got it correct. So let's identify where that happens. So where have I flipped either a head or a tail and rolled a 2 or a 4? Well, I've done it there, and I've done it there, and I've done it there, and I've done it there. At no other point have I flipped a head and rolled any other number in a tail and rolled any other number there. Okay, so let's bring that up now. So how many times did that happen? It happened 4 times. How many possible outcomes are there? There are 12. So our answer would be 4 over 12. That can be scaled down or simplified to 1/3. Let's look at one more group of questions, and this is really important because what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to do the whole thing. Again, I know it's going to be, you might think I'm sucking eggs here and it's very easy and I can do these, but it's really important, like a lot of people say, no pain, no gain. So I've got a spinner, 1, 2, 3, and I've got a spinner that could get 1, 2, 3, 4. What I'd like you to do without any more information is to draw out a sample space diagram that gives us all the possible outcomes that we would expect from spinning these 2 spinners. Pause the video, give it a go, come back and see if you've got it correct. So let's bring that sample space diagram up now. So I could spin a 1 and a 1, which would give me 1 and 1. I could go 1 and a 2, which would give me 1 and 2. 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 1, 2 and 2, 2 and 3, 2 and 4, and last I could get a 3 and a 1, 3 and a 2, and 3 and a 3, and a 3 and a 4. So let's bring up our question now. What would be the probability of spinning a total of 6 or more? So you can see here I have spun a 1 and a 1, so my total would be 2. Okay, that's the only help I'm going to give you. What would be the probability of spinning a total of 6 or more? So pause the video at this point, and when you've finished, come back and see if you've got it correct. So my first step is to identify where I've spun a total of 6 or more. So let's look through. I've got 2 here, 3 here, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's my first one there. I've got 4, 5, 6. That's my second one. And I've got 7 there, which is my third one. So how many possible outcomes did I have? I had 12, but what was I actually looking for? 3. So my answer should have been 3 times out of 12, I spun a total of 6 or more. That can be scaled down to 1/4. It is now time for the quiz. This is a little bit tricky because I'm going to just give you a little bit of help. In bag 1, I've got my counters were labelled up 1, 2, 3, 4. But in bag 2, my counters are labelled up 1, 2, 3, and 5. Don't be put off by that. Draw your sample space diagram to represent that data, and then you need to answer the second part of the question, which is find the probability of getting a score less than 5. So you're going to add your two counters together. That gives you your total, and you're going to have the times where it's less than 5. Pause the video, come back and see if you've got it correct. It is now time to see if you've got it correct. This was a little bit tricky, especially because the warm-up questions were pretty easy, but I'm sure you've done fine anyway. So bag 1, I had 1, 2, 3, and 4. Bag 2, I had 1, 2, 3, and 5. I added my two counters together to get all of my totals. Probability of a score less than 5 was 6 times out of 16 or 3 out of 8. Hopefully you've done incredibly well. I'm sure you have. As always, make sure you do write a revision card on all of these screencasts because you should use them in class, you should use them for homework. It keeps the information really fresh. It's called interleavering. It's really important to your success. If you can't be bothered to write your own, then please get in contact with me via the comments section below, and I can send you some electronic copies of those. As always, I hope you've done really well today. Hopefully you're feeling really positive, and it's been a pleasure helping you with your maths today.